next one, talking about time, number 8 is you need to finish your book in a certain time or you're behind and it's no use to finish it. There are books that take 10 years to write. And I'm saying if you take 12 years to write your first book, it took you 12 years. Someone might write it in 1 year. Someone might write it in 3 years. But there is no limit to how long it takes you to write your book unless you're using that as an excuse. If it's been a year and a half and you said you wanted to finish your book by the end of the year, it has been a whole another half of the year and you are not at least 3/4 of the way through your book, you're using it as an excuse. Do not use there's unlimited time as an excuse, because if you do take too long to write your book, and too long is something that's determined for you up here, then you'll give up on it because you're procrastinating at that point. If you predict that you will finish a book in 1 year and it's been another 6 months, you need to get on it. Like, you've been slacking off. You need to get on it. You need to finish that book. But on the other end, some people think if I don't finish my book in a year, then it's a bad book. That's not true at all. A lot of people do not finish their books in a year. A lot of people. 1 year might be a first draft for someone. Like, books take time to write, depending on how long they are. Novellas don't take as long usually, just because they're shorter. They can take as long, depending on how many drafts you have to go through. But books take a long time. So just try to make a deadline for yourself, because yes, make a deadline for yourself. Say, I'm going to finish this book in a year. If my first draft will be done in a year. Try your very hardest to stick to that deadline, but if you do pass the deadline, just know your book can still get published. You're not out of time. It's just you want to stick to something so that you can write 500 words a day. You can write 1,000 words a day. You can write 300 words a day. Just something that'll keep you motivated to finish the book, or finish the novella, or finish your writing, short story, poem, whatever you're writing. Number 9 is a very common misconception that people have about writing, and it's that you have to have this huge, never-before-seen idea that it's gonna blow everyone's minds away. No. Most likely you are not going to come up with a never-before-seen idea. And really, your idea doesn't particularly matter, as long as you execute on that idea well. For example, if you're doing a retelling of a famous story, let's say you do a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but you change it up in some kind of way. The idea has been seen before. It's Beauty and the Beast. It's very well known. But it's how you execute your book. It's how you change it. It's what are you bringing to the world that people will know you for. That's what you're trying to go for. If you do manage to come up with a never-before-seen idea, it's not going to matter if people don't like your book. You have to execute on that idea. So worry less about the idea and more about your execution. Number 10 and 11 kind of go together. They are, your first book will never be as good as any published authors, and you will never be as good as well-known authors, the household names. And for the first one, for your first book, you're probably right. I don't think that anyone can have a first book that's going to be as good as a Stephen King book. Only because Stephen King's been writing for years. Like I said before, J.K. Rowling's been writing for years. You cannot compare your first work to theirs. And the second point, number 11, that you'll never be as good as them, now that is something that is possible. If you start at whatever age you are and you continue to write and you write and you write, let's say that J.K. Rowling's been writing for 30 years. I have no idea how long she's been writing, but we're going to say 30 years. If she's been writing for 30 years, and you start now, and you look at yourself 30 years from now and you have books out like she did at that time, then yeah, technically you would have been as good as her. Even if she's still better than you, because at that point, if you just started and she was already writing 30 years, by the time you get to 30 years, she's been writing 60 years. So she still might be ahead of you in that sense, but you still kind of are the same, if that makes sense, because your pacing is the same. I don't know if that makes sense, but yes, you can be as good as the well-known authors. It's something to shoot high for. I think it's like 1% of authors actually can live off of being an author without having another job. Being paid as an author, especially through traditional publishing, is very complicated. Very complicated. Usually you get your upfront payment and that's it. You get no royalty checks because you don't meet your first payment. If they have a book and they give you $5,000, they say, okay, we'll give you $5,000 for this book. If you don't earn out, which means if your book doesn't make $5,000, you're not going to see any royalty checks. So you might as well just assume that you're only getting $5,000. $5,000 is pretty low, by the way. I'm just giving like a price. Easy price, $5,000. Then if you have $5,000, what is that going to do? That's not going to pay for rent. That's not going to pay your electric bill. Like, people who are authors as their main job, they either make a ton of royalties or they just get paid straight up front a lot of money. So it is, I would say, don't be realistic. Be very realistic about what you're doing. If you're writing a book, writing a novel, novella, short story, poem, anything like that, something that you can publish, don't think, I'm going to publish this and then I'm going to be rich. Because that is probably not going to happen. There is a very low chance that that would happen. It's not impossible, but don't think that it's going to be you, because there is a low chance that that's going to happen. But that doesn't mean that you can't get there. Keep writing. Keep going. Keep writing. Like, not all books, usually books don't get accepted from their first publisher. If you have a publishing agent and they show your book to publishing agencies, then usually the first one's not going to be like, okay, yeah, we'll buy your book, we'll give you $1 million for this book. That's just not how it happens. You probably will get rejected. And by probably, I mean there's a big chunk of people who get rejected. And that's not something to look down on. J.K. Rowling, her first Harry Potter book, got rejected by like 20-some companies. Like 20-some companies. That's a lot. And her book didn't change. She might have edited it. She might have revised it. But the central idea of the book never changed. It was just she got rejected by those 20 companies. And you might get rejected by 50 companies. We don't know. It's just, keep trying. I guess that's what I'm trying to get across. Keep trying to get into these kinds of things. If someone rejects you, revise your book, edit your book. Doesn't need editing? Try again. Try a different publishing company. Eventually, if your work is good and good in the sense of your idea is there, but maybe your execution is a little bit off. Because every time they reject you, they should give you a reason why. They might not. They might be a little bit of like, no, go away type, but usually they give you a reason, and your publishing agent will work with you with that. Your editor will work with you with that. Just keep trying to publish. Don't worry about what other people, don't worry about all the household names. They're doing great. You should take inspiration from them, but you shouldn't think that on your first try that either you're going to be like them or you're going to be a complete failure. No. There is an in-between. There's definitely an in-between, and usually we're trying to shoot for the in-between. So just keep trying. Number 12 is something that I originally thought, and it's that it's always going to be hard to commit to writing something. The first book that I tried to write, I got around chapter 1, chapter 2, gave up after that. It might have been 5,000 words. Not very long, but I just couldn't find the energy in me to keep writing it. And I assumed that it would be like that for all time. But I did eventually try to write another book because I'm obviously writing a novel now. And I have found that you need to think more as in, like, I can finish this, I can do this. I'm gonna go against everyone else, what everyone else is saying, and I'm going to finish it. It's not that it stays hard to commit to writing. I'm not saying that over time it gets easier. It might for some people. But I think, at least for me personally, it will always be hard for me to commit to something just because all the stuff that I do, like I do travel volleyball, I got school, I got other things to do, but it's easier when you think that you can actually do it, and you think, oh, my book is going to come out, and then I can show these people that I've written a book, or more people are going to know me. Whatever your goal is for writing your book, then just think of how great that would be if you finished your book, but you have to finish your book first. If you don't finish your book, then nothing's going to happen because your book doesn't exist. So, yes, it will stay hard to commit to things because humans are lazy creatures, and by nature, if we have a choice to do something or not do something, we will choose not to do something. But it'll pay off in the end, or at least you have to think that it'll pay off in the end, because if not, then you will stay down here, and it would always be hard. If you think ahead, it might get a little easier, so try that. Number 13 kind of goes along with another one that I said earlier about the ideas. Number 13 is that you will run out of ideas. Again, focus less on the ideas, more of the execution of the book. If you have a good first book, you can always make a series out of it. Like, there's so much to write. If you take a step back, you will realize how much that there actually is to whatever you're writing. If you have a solid first book, unless it was supposed to be a standalone book, if you write a standalone book, do not try to make it into a series unless you write it and realize that there is potential for a series. But if it's a standalone book, usually novellas are standalone books. Don't try to make it into a series because it will look forced. And it is forced, and we don't like forced things. So, you might think that you've run out of ideas, but you can go pretty much anywhere. You can go to an art museum. Let's say that you like art. You can look at a painting or a drawing, and you can make a book from being inspired from that. If you like dance, you can go watch some people dance, and you might be able to make a book about that. If all else fails, think about your life. If you don't want to write a book specifically about you, you don't want to write a biography, make up a story that is based on a true story. That's why all those movies, based on a true story, or this is in part from a true story. Your life continues to go. And it's not something that will ever stop that you can write about. As long as you live, you can write about what your life beforehand was. And that's a whole writing topic. You can make a series. You can make a series out of writing about yourself. That's something that James Patterson does with his Cross series, just saying. Like, you could literally, no one should run out of ideas. You keep growing up, every 5 years, write a book about yourself. Every 2 years, write a book about yourself. It doesn't have to be true. It could be fiction. It could be realistic fiction. But my point is, you can go and do the things that you see in life. You can look at nature and write a book about it. It doesn't have to be a nature book, but maybe you see a tree that reminds you of something. Maybe you see an art piece remind you of something, and you're like, oh, okay. Then you can write a book about it. So usually you will not run out of ideas. If you feel like you're running out of ideas and you've completed a project, you've finished a book, and you're in that period where you need to take a break before you start editing the book, you need a new idea so you can keep writing, then take a step back if you think that you don't have any ideas. Especially if you're just finishing a project. If you're starting a project and you weren't doing a project before, like if it's your first, you probably have a bunch of ideas up here, But if you finished a project and you hadn't thought ahead before you started that project and you're like, okay, I finished my project, I don't know what to do, just take a step back, take a break, take a step back, go somewhere, draw some inspiration, come back, start writing. If you absolutely can't think of any idea, again, look at your life. Your life is a story itself, and you could write about that. So just keep looking for ideas. The last two that I'll be sharing, number 14 and 15, kind of go hand in hand. 14 is you can use writing as a quick way to get money. No. Even if you're writing a short story, novella kind of thing, you still have to make it to get published. And some people are like, oh, I can just get self-published, I'll make quick money. Well, yes and no. If you self-publish, you run your own business. You have to do everything. You have to do your marketing. You literally have to do everything. You are your own, like, publishing company. If you go through traditional publishing, let me tell you, if you don't write something well, they won't publish you. You have to spend time on whatever you're making to get published. And no, you cannot make quick money because you actually have to get published, get out there. A traditional publishing company will do marketing for you. It's not saying you don't have to do any work. It's just they offer more for you. They give you more things than self-publishing. You self-publish and only 15 people know about your book. I mean, that's not making any money whatsoever. You cannot live off of that whatsoever. So no, you cannot make quick money off of publishing. Last but not least, number 15 is once you get published, don't worry, you can quit your day job. You will be rich. No. If you go through traditional publishing, then payment schedules are not like regular schedules. For royalty checks, I'm pretty sure most of the time it's you get paid every 6 months. So unless you're getting like really good money for those royalty checks, which is like $1.20 for just regular rate every time your book gets sold, that's not happening. You're not going to be rich off of that. And self-publishing, again, you have to do everything. You do get like all the money back if you do everything. If you do your cover, if you do all the editing, which usually means your book isn't going to be as well off. You do get all the money back, usually. I mean, you don't get everything back. Like if you publish through Amazon, you might get 75%, which is great. Awesome. Completely great. But you're going to usually get less sales, and that's also not going to make you rich. Going through a traditional publisher also gives you the seal of approval among readers and authors to hear, oh, she was published by Scholastic. Must be a good book. Your book automatically gets a reputation by who published it. If you publish your own book and people don't know who you are, they're going to assume that it's not as good as a book that was traditionally published just because that's what we look for. We look for the Scholastic. We look for the Big Five. We look for all of those publishers. If you don't have a publisher, if you are your publisher, people are going to be like, well, who is that? They're not going to be as interested in your book, and that is not something that is good. That's not something that you want. So just assume that if you're going self-publishing, I'm not exactly sure how much money an average self-published book makes, but if you're going through traditional publishing, assume that your upfront payment, that $5,000 I was talking about before, that they give you, like, I want your book, I'm going to buy your book, here's $5,000. Assume that's all the money you're going to get, because a lot of people don't earn out. A lot of people don't usually earn out. They get their upfront fee, and that's it. And then you write another book. You just keep going. Writing is something that is a hobby. You should almost look at it as a hobby that you get paid for. It's not a job unless you are that 1% that can make it their job. It is a hobby that you get paid for. So do not assume, oh, I'm a published author, I'm rich. No, that is probably not going to happen. Those are all the misconceptions I have for today. Today is a longer video, finally. Don't forget to leave a like down below, comment, subscribe, and share to anyone you think would like to watch this video. Don't forget, I linked my blog down in the description below. You can check it out. 4 p.m. every Tuesday, and on this channel I post every Friday at 4, so don't forget to check back in for a new weekly video. With that out of the way, just remember everyone to stay happy.